Team Talk Tuesday!
Team Talk Tuesday.
Dude, what am I gonna do with you today? You're gonna
Oh, you can't
fold
see
your
that.
arms.
It looked really cool.
Fold your arms. Just thank you.
All right, I'm David.
I'm Whitney.
And I'm John.
And in trouble.
So, what we're supposed to talk about today is Concrete 2030. And we already talked about this. We talked about this in the guise of, do we really have money for Concrete 2030 when we don't have money for Concrete 2018? You look at,
You're saying to get structures to last to 2030?
right, you look at CDOT. CDOT had a town hall meeting last month, beginning of this month, and anytime somebody asked a question about increasing the amount of local and state arteries to, reduce congestion, well, we're already spending money on maintenance and rehabilitation of our current arteries, our current roadways. We have a $48 billion a year. $48 billion worth of new concrete goes in every year, somewhere around there. $8.3 billion is put back into maintaining our concrete infrastructure system due to deterioration.
Yeah, 8.3 billion is really just the transportation sector. I mean, if you count driveways and homes and everything
Yeah, that's
else.
true. There's a whole private sector that we're not even
Accounting
considering
for it.
in that.
That's right.
So if you bought a truck for $50K, and the first year you had it, you had to put another $8K back into it, or $8.7K with the logic of rounding up, after like 10 years, would you really have money to buy a brand new truck?
No.
I just get a wagon.
You have a wagon, and you rarely use it.
I like it. I just love the kids around.
You use it every
I
day.
use it every day.
So the question I think is twofold. Do we have, realistically, reasonably, do we have the money to talk about concrete 2030, 2050? And the second question is, okay, for a second, let's believe we're George Clooney in Tomorrowland. I'll be George Clooney.
That's a stretch. Okay.
Wow, David.
Wow.
Tell us your.
Well, the question is, if we had that money, the Tomorrowland, what would we possibly do?
I don't think it's about more money. I think it's about people getting more comfortable with newer technologies. Because a lot of these,
You just got the finger?
I totally did.
A lot of
Not in
these-
the middle. A lot of these technologies, you can save money on cement and other components of your mix design, and then you're getting longevity as well. So I
But
feel
that's
like there's a
question
cost
number
savings.
2.
What?
Yes, I get it. That's question number 2.
What is that? Question number 2.
The question number 1 is, do we even have the money?
Yes, because you can theoretically spend the same amount and add things in to increase your strength and durability.
Well, we've got to do something. I mean, isn't that right? I mean, it's like our house. I mean, if the shingles are beginning to degrade, are we just going to patch them up, or are we going to put on a whole new roof? If the paint, are we just going to let it chip off and try to patch it here and there? Or are we going to scrape it all off and put up new and better paint? So, to me, it's that same decision process we've talked about before. You've got to, we're going to put a little money aside into savings, so we'll have savings later. I mean,
Sure.
We've got to trench in, and we've got to have some amount that we're willing to do now as an investment in the future.
Agreed.
I mean, we've just got to do that.
Well, I think there's a piece of it that we haven't discussed, and that's expectation. Because our engineers, bless them, and our architects and our owners design for 20 to 40 years, and there's even some 100-year designs.
Sure.
But like Whitney said, and that you've added in, unless we change our state of the art or state of the practice to adopt new technologies that aren't dealing with the problems that we dealt with 30, 40 years ago,
Right.
dealing with today's problems, unless we adopt those, I don't believe we'll have the money for 2030. And when I talk about 2030, what I'm referring to is adopting solar-powered concrete, piezoelectric or energy harvesting. Concrete that will have a price or a high-performance price to it,
Sure.
that if we don't alleviate that $8.3 billion of waste every year,
We're
we
just not gonna
can't
have-
expect to buy that new stuff, because what is a standard cubic yard or a standard yard of concrete?
150, 200.
Right.
I would say 130 to 150 for standard residential.
Right.
Now, when you start getting high performance, $200, $300 a cubic yard, right? The stuff that we're talking about, 500, north of 500. Some of them north of 1,000, but now they become an active participant. And when we talk concrete 2030, we're talking like Tony Stark, Iron Man, concrete,
Well,
and
and if we
making you an
don't,
espresso.
and if we don't start getting comfortable with these less invasive newer technologies, how are we ever going to be comfortable moving on to those just really, bright, shiny,
High tech.
super high tech?
I wouldn't say that some of these new technologies aren't invasive, because some of them you got to empty out silos of fly ash and replace it
My
with something
point is,
new
though,
or a
it's
brand
still
new admixture.
gray concrete that, you know what I
Gray
mean?
concrete that comes
that
down the
behaves like concrete.
Sure.
Whereas when we're adding these other things, we're trying to do solar power, energy harvesting, whatever it is, it's still concrete, but it's not the concrete that everyone's quite as comfortable with.
So concrete 2030, that's going to be like the Disneyland of concrete. Virtual reality. I mean, it's going to be
Concrete video games.
concrete diving into the concrete and then concrete bringing back energy. Right now, do you believe our national infrastructure will have the money for concrete 2030?
Not if they don't change its ways.
It's a big no from Whit.
I don't see us moving fast enough that direction. I
Agree.
mean, that's less than 2 decades. I mean,
Just over one.
that's not that long from now.
Might have 1 or 2 new ASTMs written by then, but I think that might be his.
now.
So,
We're getting there slowly.
so was that a no?
I'm not talking about you specifically, I'm saying industry-wide.
So was that a no from you, David?
Yeah, I don't see us changing fast enough. Back in the last century when we talked about these things,
Jeez.
we talked about technology doubling every 5 years. We went from rotary phones to,
Cell phones.
touch tones to cell phones, and now I've got more power in my pocket than I used to have at the computer center.
Sure.
So in that industry, there was rapid adoption. There was a hunger for the new, the better, the best.
Right.
And people look at iPhones. People just stand in line to buy the next version.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
pay the money, happily pay full price for it.
Happily pay. And do we have anybody standing in line for new and better concrete? I can't think of a single line I've seen. Really.
I can.
Yeah.
I can think of a line when people run out of the technologies that they rely on. And they'll stand in line for the crappier end of those mature technologies, and when those aren't left, then they're not standing in line, they're grasping at straws, and they're desperate for new technology. Yes, I've seen the line, maybe in a different way than your context implied, but I have seen the line, and that's the tragic reality that most of the folks in our industry aren't willing to accept, that you're going to be forced to make these decisions sooner or later.
They're going to be forced to make fly ash. Going to be forced to make them sooner.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I see that as concrete 2023. I mean,
It's not far away, and as the
No.
years go by, it's
If you look at the trend from when the coal combustion residue or the renewable energy shift started happening, which was in 1978, to where coal combustion is now, I mean, you can't undo those decades of work to go away from coal combustion residue.
Right.
And where do you think we get our fly ash from, right? So this is the unfortunate reality. Thank you very much for joining us while we went over what we thought was the realistic view of Concrete 30. And to a degree, it's a little cynical,
Yeah.
but I think it's realistic.
I agree.
we know where we need to get to, and we know where we are.
How do we get there, though?
We need to be able to step by step get where we need to go.
And
And
I think it's
in the concrete industry, that's small bites at a time.
It is.
Small changes at a time.
educating and holding hand through adoption and those sorts of
Right.
things.
And those disruptive companies will have the nachas, the spirit, the gusto to make those changes happen.
And those are the ones that are going to emerge.
Oh,
Amen.
absolutely.
Oh, amen. It makes them, they're going to be cash cows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Everybody
right.
else.
Absolutely. The ones that are willing to make the change now are the ones that are going to make big change
Yeah,
later.
and they'll be
Amen.
that much further ahead.
That's my opinion. I'm David.
I'm John.
I'm Whitney.
Go concrete.
Beat
Yeah,
asphalt.
well,